Welcome to another episode of Trending Up with Edgar de Leon and Sebastian Lopez. We hope you enjoy and are challenged to live life differently as you keep trending up. Hey Trenders, welcome back to another episode of Trending Up. I am really excited to be here with you along with Edgar. We're excited to be back and continuing our dialogue about the Enneagram series. Right now we are going into Type 2. So if you're kind of curious and you just stumbled upon this and you don't know what we're talking about, I invite you to go back 2 episodes to the Enneagram series. I think the title was what? The Enneagram. And so there we talk about why we're talking about this and what it is. So yeah.
No, I'll give a quick recap. It's good to know who we are.
For sure.
In order to understand ourselves, we need to know how our personalities work out, and that is the focus of our Enneagram series. So today's today's Enneagram type is number 2. So number 2 is considered the helper.
Right.
This is people who typically want to guess what? Help, right? They are caring, interpersonal type.
Right,
They're demonstrative. They're generous. They're people-pleasing, and they can be possessive. What do you have to say
about twos?
Well, twos. Well, let me see. Let me start off by this. You are a 3 and a 2, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So your highest is 3.
Supposing like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a high of a 3 and then a wing of a 2. So this is applicable straight to me. So mercy, all the people are gonna listen to this are gonna know the good.
We're gonna expose
the bad and the bad, right?
Yeah, right.
But yeah.
So the helper. Some words, I think that some keywords that would describe a 2 would be caring, people pleaser, sentimental, generous, at times resentful. Some people would see them as self-neglecting and possessive. The reason is because just before we get into actually the deep details, the number 2 is like that one person that is always, let's say you have a get together at your house, right? And and you were like, no, I'm going to host and you guys don't have to bring anything. The 2 will be at the store and we'll call you up and say, hey, before I go to your house, is there anything that anybody needs, right?
Yeah.
Or what can I do to help, right? They're just always thinking about others and always serving, which is just an amazing characteristic and strength that they have, which is always thinking of others and how can I'm going to cook, I'm going to bring stuff, or no, I'll bring my own ball, we'll play with my basketball, just always thinking, and doing that. So very interesting, right? Some things that the Enneagram Institute brings up, and again, we have this linked in the show notes, great wealth of information there. But it says this, that 2s attempt to control their shame by getting other people to like them and to think of them as good people.
So what you already find, if you identify with the 2, you want to serve people so they can like you, right?
Right.
And they're always trying to be nice so they can like you.
Right.
Sometimes, because we explained this in episode number the introduction to the series.
Yep.
We explained that there are good parts, like good healthy 2s, and there's unhealthy 2s. And before we go into the like you said, the finer details, we find that 2s may serve, but to their detriment. They may be there to be there to like serve, to to feed the people, or to pasture, but they may not be able to take care of their own well-being, maybe their own families. Mercy. So what you find is that the 2s can be the person that is always by your side, but you really need to be conscious about their well-being. They could be in an unhealthy balance.
Interesting. And I'm wondering if you have, give you some time to think about a personal experience. I don't know. I feel like maybe 2s and 9s are kind of similar, because 9s is kind of like also always thinking about the group and the other person. So not trying to like, I'm not even gonna tell you. No, for example, we're gonna go out to eat. It's okay. I'll eat wherever you want. Because you don't want to cause conflict. You want to please everyone else. And I think the 2s kind of have that too, where they're like, instead of focusing on my issues and my problems, they can neglect that because they're always trying to help and please others. And that can be a detriment, because you can kind of thrive or you kind of desire to be needed, right? In a negative sense, if that can be for a 2. But yeah, I don't know if you have any experience of how that has You want to be vulnerable already. I know we're just a couple minutes in.
Man, come on, man. No, yeah, as a person who is highly, according to the study, highly rated as a 2,
Right.
I can definitely understand that I can have good motives to serve people, because God, as a Christian, before anything else, as a child of God, God has called me to love Him, right? I love Him because He first loved me, so forth, and that idea. But then also to love my neighbor, and so I have found in my life that I want to give so much, and at the cost of my like own like health and my mental health, spiritual health, physical health. So this is a real like danger for me as a pastor, because as a pastor, I don't make something metal, or I don't drive a truck, or I don't like build a house. I literally am called to pastor and to serve people. So you really find this occupation of giving. So if I'm not aware of my own limitations as a giver, I will do it to my detriment. And as we go into the finer details of twos, I'll just give a story. There's a pastor who's now retired, and he's like been at the head of, like, for those who are Adventists, he's been a conference president, right? Been the pastor, the president, the pastor leading the whole network of churches. Like he was the youth director. He was all this, and he told me now he's in his 70s, and he said, Edgar, he said, my daughters tell me, his daughters are grown. He said, Dad, I wish you had spent as much time with me as you spent with the other youth.
Wow.
And because I think his personality was to give the people in whatever capacity, as a youth director, as a president, but the detriment to himself and
to his family.
His byproduct was his family. So
that's crazy.
Twos they're sincere, they're warm-hearted,
but there can be that
they're generous.
I think sorry, I think the church kind of, before we move on to the church kind of encourages that, right? Where it's like, and the idea where, like, kind of Paul says, it's just like you're going to go through suffering, but it's all for Christ and stuff. And I think sometimes neglect and discourage self retreat and self help and those moments where you need to kind of spend time by yourself, because we say that's selfish, because like, no, you got to pour yourself out for the church, right? If you're working for the church or whatever you're doing, and that many times is to our own detriment, right? I think especially as twos, you need to be careful not to allow that rhetoric or that idea to really just control everything, and then it's just you can't give what you don't have, right? And
no, for sure. And
you are filled up yourself. So
absolutely. And I know we're talking a lot from the pastoral perspective, but like, even if you're not a pastor, like you may be giving yourself a lot to your work,
right?
To your spouse,
right?
Your church, or to your hobby, whatever it is. But if you give yourself too much, without being able to take care of yourself, you're gonna hurt yourself.
Right.
It's gonna be detrimental to you.
You gotta set boundaries,
as a person.
right?
So this is applicable. You have to set boundaries, and it's applicable to every person in their own capacity.
Right.
Yeah. So what's a basic fear of a two, Sebastian?
So a basic fear is of being unwanted or unworthy of being loved, right? We've kind of touched on that. So the basic desire would be the opposite, to feel loved, right?
Yeah.
To feel needed, which I think at its core isn't, it can be selfish, but I think it's still a good desire. It's kind of a sense of love. I don't know, or you can agree or disagree, but in the sense of, like, it's not that they need you, but it's nice to know, like, for example, that Chantal does desire my whatever I can bring to the table, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah. It's interesting
feel
because
love. I think we're all made to relationship.
No, absolutely. We were, and this is interesting because as a man, one day we should have a series on, like, stereotypes of like men and women, you know.
Yeah.
But as a man, sometimes the idea is that you love like your wife, right? You are there to be with your wife.
Right.
But twos, as a man, they actually want to feel loved by their wives as well. So, you know, so that dynamic,
that's interesting. Yeah.
For I think men can feel very conflicted, because you know, women are told, you know, husbands want to be respected, right? They want to be like, I don't know. My dad wanted to be like fed when he came from work. You know, he wanted to, you know, wanted all these things, and that's what you're supposed to do. You know, you're a man. But what you find is that men that are twos, that are very manly and don't like to express their feelings, they may not be able to express what they need. So they may be very, very have low self-esteem, and show and be
a different persona, show a pseudo self, right? That
a pseudo self,
really them,
a superficial self, because they don't really understand what's going on. So that's why
that's good.
It's important to know who you are, to understand your expectations.
Right.
For you know, your expectations for God, your expectations for your spouse for work, and so forth.
Yeah.
So
very interesting stuff. Yeah. We'll obviously put a lot of these notes in the actual show notes, but what would be a biblical figure that we think is a two?
you know, as I think I would present to everybody that a biblical figure for a two is John, the disciple, the revelator, and also Mary Magdalene. What do you think, Sebastian? Do you think John was a two?
I think so. In the sense that because twos are very aware of the needs of others, and which can be very noble, they can ignore their own needs, right? We've kind of talked about that. And also twos are natural givers, but they struggle to receive either from a neighbor or from God, right? So I think John was good just because he's very close to Jesus, known as a beloved disciple.
Yeah, the beloved disciple.
And I think he was good at knowing, just understanding the heart of God, right? You can see in his letters, whether that be in the book of John or in 1 John, 2 John, and 3 John, he's very like keen to the heart of God, right? Maybe he was a 4-2, but I think he was good in the sense of knowing the needs of others and being there. What do you think?
Yeah. You know, the first text is the famous one that you find everywhere. I went to In-N-Out. I just came back from vacation, and I went to In-N-Out like so many times that I'm ashamed to say how much. I'm ashamed to say it on my podcast, but I will tell you in person, so you can text me or whatever. Anyways, and in the fries of In-N-Out, underneath it, I believe it says John 3:16. Right. So John the disciple wrote, obviously, the verse John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, etc., etc. So you find that John's like one of his main points to communicate to people is that God loves us and he gave himself for us, because that really resonates with John's idea of to love other people. So we find that John is just highlights God's loving character, and because it's part of who he is as a person, and it to the point of death, right? And I you know, God is not he's not contained by gender, nor by stereotypes, nor by time, nor by anything. But we find that in God we find flashes of twos, of ones, of everything. And in John 3:16, on Jesus and Jesus on the cross is not just to show that God can bleed. Yes, that's part of it. Yes, but it's that God is willing to die.
To give up himself. That's good.
Right?
That's good. Yeah, very good. Yeah, and you mentioned too, I think Mary, the mother of Jesus, she's willing to serve God at a large cost to herself, but to the ultimate glory of God. So it's just this idea of like self-sacrificing love, right? Like we were hitting on the head with with Jesus and God sacrificing themselves for the benefit of others. So yeah, definitely good. Definitely good. Something that one of the notes here.
Think about Mary. She was about to get married,
Right.
Sorry, I
Oh, you
think
good. You good.
Sebastian right now is going through Hurricane Dorian or Durian. I forgot
Dorian.
which one it
Yeah, yeah.
is.
We didn't talk about it. Yeah, yeah. We're in the middle. I think my internet is kind of spotty. It's not that bad right now, thankfully.
Yeah. Okay.
It's
All
raining
right.
on and off, but yeah, my internet is kind of.
But anyways, I was gonna mention real quick that Mary, she was about to get married, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's her interest. She's gonna get married, but
Yep.
then Scripture details that the angel comes and the Spirit actually in the most one of the mysteries of just genetics and everything
Right. Right.
impregnates Mary, and now she is with a baby,
Mm.
and she's not married.
Oh.
I mean, who would willingly want to go through that today? But
Right.
today you can get like welfare, you can get
Mm-hmm.
help. People are more, but during that time, if you got pregnant out of a marriage, I mean,
Yeah. You're out.
you're out. You're not. I mean,
That's very interesting. I never thought about that.
so she
That's
gave
very interesting. Yeah.
she gave her own, I guess, stability
Mm-hmm.
for the glory of God,
Yeah.
and having the Son of Man come through
Yeah.
her own body, and
Yeah.
divinity and humanity came together. Anyways, so she was giving herself, her
Mm-hmm.
literally her body through the pregnancy experience.
Right. Right.
Um,
That's
but
deep. That's deep. That's deep.
so other famous twos, according to the Enneagram Institute, is Princess Diana was
Mm-hmm.
considered a two.
Yeah.
Archbishop Desmond Tutu, I don't know who that gentleman is, but we can Google him later. Hagrid from Harry Potter.
Uh-oh.
Oh,
You don't know about that, right?
oh, and I don't know
I actually
who is that Hagrid guy. All right, anyways,
yeah.
and then
He's a girl.
some would say Princess Leia from Star Wars. I don't really know Star Wars, right?
I know a
So
little bit. Whatever. But yes, something also too I want to know. Twos, things that positions or jobs or things that they excel at would be a teacher, a life coach, a therapist, and a nonprofit founder. That's not the only thing, right? But
yeah,
it's just things that they do that they connect with that they would be great at, and I think really tap into their strengths. So talking about strengths, service is the middle name of a type 2. You love giving to others, and as long as you're healthy, you don't need attention to do so. If you're unhealthy, though, you're probably looking for affirmation from others when you serve. So personal growth recommendations that we did last time with type 1. Remember that if you are not addressing your own needs, it is highly unlikely that you will be able to meet anyone else's needs without problems, underlying resentments, and continual frustration. So I believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Edgar, with a 2, you can be serving. And at some point, if you have an unhealthy trait of the 2, right? And if you are in a healthy characteristic of it, you might sit there and be like, wait a minute, I'm doing so much and the other person is not doing anything. Like I'm giving 85 and you're giving 15%. Like, how is that fair? Right. So
yeah,
that can be a potential issue for sure.
No, for sure. And I know I've talked a lot in this podcast, but this is so real to me because when Michelle and I started to date back in 2012, so about 7 years ago.
Yeah.
I would tell her that I need to go work out. And need is a funny word, right? Anyways, I want to go work out and whatnot. And I've come to realize that need, and Michelle didn't really understand the beginning. She's like, well, you want to go move some weights? That's
yeah.
You can
how is that a need? Yeah. How is that a desire of yours? Yeah.
I realized that it's not just that I need it, but it was for my own recharge, for my own experience in being a person. So it's not I can't give without being have my quiet time doing moving some weights. I know it can seem
you
so
need
dumb.
to have that. That's your personal space and time, right? Like that's where you I guess are recharged. Yeah, definitely. So type part 2, second point here, try to become more conscious of your own motives when you decide to help someone. So like we talked about before, 2s can be addicted in a sense to feeling desired and needed, and in that way you can become an enabler to people that at times may need to do their own things, right? You might just be, because it just becomes like this symbiotic relationship where you're doing for others what they should be doing for themselves, and they never grow, and you're, so it's just, what I'm saying, it kind of like that. So I think it reminds me of the verse that Jesus says in the Sermon on the Mount, where he says, don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, like in terms of when you're giving and you're serving, right? So don't make a big show of it. And I think maybe for traits for an unhealthy two, if you may find yourself thinking like, oh, I hope everyone sees what I'm about to do, and you bring a big platter to a potluck or a get together, or you shell out a bunch of money so that people and I just donated X amount of money. Look at me, and you can be doing it rather than for the benefit of the person. The major the desire you're doing is just to be seen as someone that is a helper, because that's such a noble thing in our society, right? So very interesting, very interesting. What's the next one, Edgar?
The next one is that that you should ask what people need rather than just give what you think they need, right?
That's good.
This is the best for like gifts.
Yeah.
I'm the worst gift giver because I think I'm like, I know what I need to serve them. And I give them the gift, and my wife is like, why did you give that gift? So this was like an idea that really I came to realize when I was dating Michelle, because she was like, Edgar, don't give what you want to give.
Or what you want to receive. Right. That's good.
Yeah. Or what I want to receive. Give what they want to receive. And that's why you need to ask and really find out like more about them rather than yourself. I gave, it reminds me of Michael Scott in The Office when he gave an iPod to Ryan because he wanted to be seen as the one that gave.
Right. The ultimate giver. Right.
The one that spent $300 when the limit was only $20. So you can't do that. You gotta ask, hey, what would they like to get? Right.
Yeah.
What's the fourth point?
The next one is kind of like the second point: resist the temptation to call attention to yourself and your good works. So I think it goes in hand. We talked on that. So, and the last point is learn to recognize the affection and good wishes of others, even when these are not in terms that you are familiar with. So we've seen through different numbers. We've talked about the love languages in a previous episode too. I think it requires humility to be able to give in the way that others desire to be given, whatever it is, whether love or gifts or attention. And it's also it requires humility for us to say, hey, even though you're not at this point addressing my actual love need, I'm respecting you because you're going out of your way to try to show me love, right? So try to be patient. I think it's very, very interesting, right? Try to recognize the affection and good wishes of others. They're good motives, even though it may not be what you're familiar with. But
absolutely. Craig Groeschel, this is pastor down south. He says that that twos, you may see all that you are not, but God looks and sees all that you are.
Oh, that's good.
So you may say, God, I'm serving you. I'm doing this.
Right.
That, but it's not enough.
Right.
But God doesn't just want your actions or your acts.
Right.
He loves you for who you are.
Right.
I think that is grace, and it's a constant like tug of war.
Yeah.
And something that we need, that twos should understand. So for those that resonate, if you haven't taken this test, you haven't taken it, but you resonate with this, and you're like, wow, that sounds like me. First, please take the test. It's in our show notes.
Yeah.
And then free and short. And second of all, learn who you are so you can understand yourself better.
Right.
And as you understand better, you're gonna be able to love other people better. You're gonna be able to recognize others. Like for typically twos, it's not. We mentioned this in the introduction. It's not just for a specific gender, but if you recognize a two around you, whether it's your husband or your wife, be aware of who they are and their own needs.
Yeah.
Because they're gonna, it reminds me of dogs. I'm not comparing twos to dogs because first of all, I'm a two, so I'm not. This is not derogatory at all. But please don't get offended.
Yeah.
But like dogs love you so much that if you take them all out on a walk, and they're gonna be huffing and puffing, and they're happy, and they will exert themselves to exhaustion, and even to like a level where it's not healthy for them, but they want to be there with you.
Right.
Twos are similar. They're going to serve you to the point of detriment. So it's an honorable thing, but you need to be very careful of the healthy balance.
Okay? And setting boundaries, I think, is important too.
Yeah.
But twos, we love you, Edgar. I love you. I appreciate your hard work and all that. And thank you for this episode. Thank you for being vulnerable and talking about your actual experiences. I think that brings a great depth to it.
It was my pleasure to be on this podcast. You know, I'm here to serve, right? So
yeah. So yeah, we definitely have more in the show notes. Check those out. We also have the link to the free test and some other Instagram stuff that are pretty interesting, and it's all free resources for you to develop yourself and to grow more. So we hope that you use this. I'm already putting the peace sign because I'm already doing peace, but we hope you take this and you're able to just grow, and in doing so you keep training up. We love you guys. Peace. Thanks for joining us today. Make sure to subscribe and follow us wherever you get your podcasts. Please rate us and share our content. Learn more about us by checking out our website. The link is in our show notes. From us to you, muchas gracias, and always keep trending up.